Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about art. We're going to talk about the business of art.
Right, and how it actually works.
And we're going to talk about Capcom getting the business from Kotaku over an art contest, a seemingly innocuous art contest. Every grade school kid understands how an art contest works, but apparently Kotaku does not.
Well, Ian Walker in particular.
This writer does not understand how art contests work. Now, these kinds of things have been going on for years. We'll talk about that because Capcom has done contests before in the past. I remember back in the day when I was a kid, they were doing design your own Mega Man robot contests.
I remember all kinds of art contests. There was even a gem contest where you call and sing, and then you might get picked to sing for gem. You know, and you called and sung, but they had the rights to use it. That's how it works.
Those are the rules. And He-Man, they had a big thing over, remember Fearless Photog? They had a He-Man, create your own He-Man character back in the day, and they never produced the action figure until years later. They did a Classics collection, but they produced Fearless Photog, who was like a camera head robot.
Did I buy that for you?
You did.
I did buy that for you.
And some kid...
See how awesome I am?
Yeah, I know you are.
You already tell me how awesome I am. No, I'm kidding.
I know you're awesome. But yeah, I have them. They made a Classics version of them years after the fact. So look, fan art contests have been a thing for a very long time, and the rules are understood. It's understood when you enter a contest, you're not going to get paid. It's understood when you enter a contest voluntarily, that they get to keep the submissions. Right.
I mean, that's just normal. And for no other reason than they use it to cover their butts. Like, I know for pitching, we mentioned this before, when you pitch shows, they won't even look at pitches anymore unless you have someone, they ask you to pitch, or someone, negotiates an agent or something to pitch. Because they're afraid of being accused of taking things or whatever, and for liability reasons. And a lot of times you have to sign, we had to sign with Disney, for example, that we understand that if something similar appears later, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because they took it from our whatever. Now, that could be argued that sometimes they take stuff, sometimes they don't, depending on the places. But I'm just saying this is a liability issue. They usually just do this as like, umbrella coverage.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, I mentioned this in passing to somebody. Like, I mentioned my idea to a janitor at Disney, and then they wound up doing a movie 10 years later that sounded like the idea that I mentioned to the janitor. Yeah. Therefore, I have the right to sue them.
Yeah, it isn't like, and then there's incidences where they actually have proof that they actually kind of took their story. So, I mean, we're not talking about that. We're talking about basic costume contests. Right. Whatever. It's a basic contest thing. It's a liability issue. That's why Disney put that stupid wording on their Twitter that time.
About the social media for the Star Wars.
If you reply to that, then they have the right to use it.
They could retweet it. They could put the tweets in a promotional video.
They don't have to pay you for it.
Right.
I mean, it's basically this contest, and there's a prize involved, and they have this verbiage, and the reason they have it that way is so they can use stuff, or they aren't going to be accused of stealing stuff later on because you submitted it, because you're willingly submitting it, understanding that was what's going on.
And that is the key. This is voluntary. This is willfully submitting artwork. Now, this is a Street Fighter V costume design contest. Kotaku says they're asking for free labor. That's not a contest. We're going to talk about this because this is a whole nother issue we've had problems with and lots of discussions about over the years, because it seems current year that a lot of aspiring artists seem to think that they should be paid for tryouts, and if they're not, and this is not really related to the contest, but it is. It's that mentality.
Basically, this is not the same thing as spec. And that's argued
what they're saying.
In this.
Yes.
This is not the same thing as spec work. And the spec work we're going to talk about too. Because I'm tired of hearing these people bitch about spec work.
They don't understand what they're talking
why
about.
they have you do it this way. Anyway.
Here we go. So I'm going to start reading this article and we're going to comment. Capcom recently opened a special contest for Street Fighter V, asking fans to submit costume designs for possible inclusion in the fighting game's final season. On the surface, it may seem like a cool way to interact with fans. I think it is. But the lack of any monetary compensation makes it all too easy to view this contest as yet another instance of a developer disregarding the very real work that goes into crafting designs.
Well, you're allowed to have that opinion. You're allowed to view it as an instance of that. If you'd like to, don't enter. Problem solved. But this is normal for contests.
Yeah, this is very... I can't wrap my head around how any adult
Well, you said adult. That's why.
Doesn't understand how an art contest works. And we're going to go through. There's a lot of comments on this one, too. And we're going to talk about some of the other fan initiatives that Capcom has done. Some of them actually in conjunction with UDON, who publishes the comic books.
And here's the thing. It's a really cool way to give your fans a chance to be included. And I think it is a really good way for interacting with your fans, because it makes the fans excited and they have a chance to be in it. It's really cool.
You would think. So here's where it gets murky, because this is not what we're talking about. What Capcom's requesting here is commonly known as spec work.
No.
It is not spec work.
Nope, not the same thing.
Which is just a punchy way of describing creative work done on a volunteer basis with no promise of compensation.
That's not what spec work is. Let's start by explaining what spec work is to the people who don't understand what the hell spec work means.
Okay, so spec work, this is coming from someone who has been off and on freelance graphic designer, web developer,
comic book artist, and we've hired and paid artists.
Yeah, and this is where we really want to go with this conversation, because we are seeing this trend which is going to lead to a lot of disappointment, very unrealistic expectations about how the business actually works. So for years, how you got jobs, if you were, because I was self-employed, what you would have to do is you would have to submit a proposal or a spec or something, do a mock-up for a potential client, because you're self-employed, you're a business, and they're paying you for your services, but you have to show them you can do the job.
Right.
So the only way to show them you can do the job usually is to mock something up. You do a mock-up of like a design or something, with the understanding they don't get to keep that. This is just to show them.
They don't print it or use it. It's an audition. It's like if you go audition for a TV show or movie, and then you see the audition tapes later that the studios release, because they have you're in there auditioning. They keep the tapes. They're not going to actually use it. There's a reason they have you do spec work, especially for comics and art, because people can go to my portfolio page if you want to hire me. Okay, so I go to your portfolio page, and there's a bunch of pieces on there. Two things. One, I don't know if you actually drew those pieces.
That's true.
And two, I don't know if those pieces took you a day, or took you 5 weeks, or took you a year. Don't know. And with comics and things like that especially, they have to have work done like that. They need turnaround time. It has to be quick. You might have the best work in the world, but if you aren't quick enough, you aren't going to get hired, because they need stuff to be moved rather quickly. So they would give you an audition page, which you've done many.
Yeah.
And what you do is you would color or draw or whatever you're applying for, and then they have a time frame. So one, they can see that you draw like you say you can, color like you say you can, etc. And two, they can see that you can do it in a time frame they want. Now, they don't print these. These are auditions to get the job. I'm sorry if you don't like it. You don't get paid to go to take an interview at McDonald's either. This is how it works.
Some people, I'm not kidding. This is where it gets weird. This current generation. Some people actually think you should be compensated financially for your time to go fill out job applications.
These are also people who think that we should do socialism so they can stay at home and draw bad comics and get paid for it. Same people. But I have a story about my dad, real quick. My dad was the head of maintenance for a government office place. I'm not going to go where it is. He was head of maintenance there. And what would happen is when they need to hire people would apply for it, and oftentimes, it was because people were desperate for jobs, and even people who weren't qualified would try, because it's understandable.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, but it was during like time where their jobs were down, and anybody who might apply for it might not have the experience needed to do the job, but they were just trying anything they could to get a job. Sadly, you can't have that, because you can't have somebody who doesn't know how to wire something and catch a building on fire. So my dad took to the place where part of the interview, he would put stuff in front of somebody, like a box, wires, whatever, and he'd tell them to wire it. And things like that, because he had to make sure they knew what the hell they were doing, because oftentimes they didn't know what the heck they were doing. And just because they said they can do it doesn't mean they actually can do it. It's the same thing.
I have a friend who years ago was looking for an artist. We'll talk about this. Was looking for an artist and was getting these really amazing sequential samples from an art studio overseas, and it turned out that they were not their work. They were just lifting people's pages, trying to get them to agree to hire them. And the only way, again, that you can make sure somebody does the job is to give them a tryout. Now, again, that's different than, hey, I'm going to run with this and print it. We're not talking about anything being published or whatever. We ran into this when we tried to hire colorists. We printed indie comics and we were trying to find colorists. And we ran into this primarily on DeviantArt. We put a kind of a help wanted out there and we said, if you're interested in coloring for a comic, here's a tryout page. Now, this tryout page or pages that we had, they were previously published material. So we had no intention of taking anybody's artwork or anything like that. And I was shocked because I was like, things have definitely changed. From when I tried out for comics, when I broke into comics, I had to do many, many, many tryouts to finally break into comics. Because like you said, they have to make sure you can do the job. But we had so many people that were, we had hundreds of nasty comments on this job posting. Because we were like, yeah, color this page. It's a sample, whatever. Give us your info. We had no intention of printing it. We needed to make sure you could do it.
It was basically you show your portfolio. If we liked the style, we would then ask you to do a small piece to make sure that you could do it in a timely fashion. Because we had to do 3 pages a week, and 2 that you could actually do in the style you said. Because we have seen people try to pass off artwork that was not their own before. And so it wasn't even like everybody who wanted the job had to do the spec work. It was if we thought your work was up to what we wanted or the right style, then we would ask you to do it just to make sure. Which people who did get the job had no problem doing it. And they were, now whether they finished the job later is another question entirely. But they were fine with it. But the people that were whining the most, ironically, a lot of them were the ones that we would never have hired in a million years anyway.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. So again, there is a difference between spec work and working for exposure, which they talk about here, and entering a fucking art contest. Right. Which even a child understands how art contests work.
But this is not spec. It's not working for exposure. It's not spec.
Seriously, is Kotaku that hard up for news right now that they have to look for things to be upset about?
Apparently, they hard up for news. They have to hire people to write stuff write shit like this.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it because this writer actually in the past was actually very pro art book, pro tribute book, and thought it was a great idea, but now they're throwing shade for this art contest. It's freaking weird. So unfortunately, working for exposure doesn't put food on the table. Well, no shit. We're not talking about, hey, do all these designs, do all this work up front, and we're not going to give you anything until later on the back end. We're talking about submit a drawing as part of a contest. Well, reactions to the contest have been generally positive.
Yeah, because it's a cute idea to interact with your fans who are interested in entering. No one's making you.
Including tweets, responses to the tweet that they put out. It's frustrating that a mega successful video game company like Capcom would ask folks to work for free. They're giving them the option. It's voluntary.
Okay, wait, so what are they supposed to do? You want to enter this contest. We're going to pay every single one of you for your drawings to enter a contest that doesn't even make sense. You're not going to. Any contest you enter, even if it's not an art one, you go online to a blogger and you enter a contest. They don't pay you for your 5 minutes to enter the contest.
They do not. I'm sure many of the fighting game community's amazing artists would have jumped at the chance to do paid work for Street Fighter.
Everybody wants to do paid work, and you know what? Sometimes the contests lead to paid work.
Well,
not necessarily this one, but other times it has.
That is in the fine print. In fact,
it is?
It is.
Okay, because we know for a fact that you were in some things that actually were, that you led to actually getting gigs on some of the books and things for other properties.
Yeah, so here is the official rules, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. Even if an entry does not win the contest, Capcom may still contact the entrant if the design is of high enough quality. Capcom cannot answer any questions about the process or reason of the winner selected, and all selections are made in Capcom's sole discretion.
Which is their right to do since they're running the contest.
Right, so if they think you're good enough, even if you don't win or whatever, they might actually keep your stuff on file. They might contact you for paid work.
Oh, and then they're having a fit about the thing about the Canadian resident wins. You have to answer a mathematical.
That's the law, I think.
That is the law. That is any contest you enter. If you're entering from Canada, you have to enter a stupid question. It's just the way it is. It's nothing to do with being shady.
So here comes an outspoken critic of the contest, the rando that they pulled, an esports photographer. What does that have to do with art as a career?
Why is this person talking about art contests when he's a writer?
What it comes down to is that the contest is asking people to create something that Capcom almost certainly pays other artists for on a regular basis, regardless of whether the design is actually used in the game. They said they get to keep the entries, but I don't think they're saying anywhere that they're going to take anybody's artwork. God, the comic book people are so outraged about everything.
I can't even. And the thing is, they don't have to pay for every entry to this. Don't enter. This is normal behavior. here. I can't even.
This is an art contest. An art contest. The winner, which I think is pretty cool, gets to have their design in the Capcom game. Capcom has been doing this for years.
It was a thing for fans to bolster, excitement, to do some stuff in the community, to give back to the fans a chance to have that chance to be put in a game where they might not otherwise get that chance.
Capcom could easily seek out artists and make a call for portfolio submissions. They could, and they have, and they might, but this is a contest. It's a promotional thing.
It's different. God, I can't, the mental gymnastics to go through, to contort yourself, to getting this pissed off about something so stupid, it hurts my brain.
And this is actually open to kids 13 and older, I think, if I read that. So you've got kids that are not professionals that maybe their art's not the best, but Capcom likes the basic design, and they'll take that and turn it into something more professional.
So it's more fair to everyone. And here's the thing they said about, they decide. You don't have any information. Because you know what? They put down, here's our criteria. They're not going to tell you what the criteria is, because everybody's going to go to that criteria. They're going to make complaints. Well, you made a criteria based on, you're just looking for a male character design, not a female character design, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they'll have a shit fit, baby fit whining fest about that.
Every rule in these contests or submission policies or whatever is because somebody did something stupid.
It's there for a reason. That's like, why do curling irons have external use only written on them? I mean, somebody did something stupid.
I know, right? Instead of paying artists, Capcom is marketing the fact that the chosen designs will appear in Street Fighter V as the main reward. That is a contest. Again,
not spec work. Totally different.
That is, Capcom has been doing this since the freaking 1980s.
So,
come on.
This article is completely based on someone's misunderstanding of what spec work means and how contests work.
Yeah, it's entirely possible these designs will be sold, or at the very least spur additional sales of the game from folks who want to use them. It's also possible that Capcom will like your work enough to hire you. Winners will also receive an in-game title. Well, yeah. The total monetary value is 0, but you got bragging rights. You could be like, I won the Capcom art contest. How is this hard to this is not the same thing as spec work.
And it could get you other gigs because of it.
The contest rules also stipulate the Capcom assumes ownership. This is normal.
That's like more for liability reasons.
Don't enter the damn contest if you don't want to play by the rules.
Here's another thing that, this is probably another reason why they keep the entries and stuff. Some people might enter things that they stole from other people. And then they have to verify it's theirs.
Yeah, I mean, but they're like, that's it too. Like, did you actually make this design? I mean,
I can't tell you how many times people will claim things that aren't theirs. It happens all the time.
But you've got, here he asked another fan artist, I should be getting paid $500 for this.
Cherry pick the fan artists that agree with them.
Because
I know a lot of fan artists don't agree with them.
Yeah, so let's go out and look at some of these comments, because there are 70 some comments.
Oh, there was only 60 last time I looked.
Let's see here. Reminds me of the old Mega Man boss character design contest. At least Mega Man contests had good prizes. Agreed on all counts. Capcom has been oppressing the gamer proletariat since the 1980s. Yeah, I've been a freelance designer for years, and I sure do like getting paid for my work, but I'm not sure that any kind of equitable scenario exists here. This is not... Well,
this reminds me of when you were in that Transformers contest.
Yeah, I did a Transformer contest years ago. IDW did it. Mm-hmm. It was actually a cover contest. I didn't get any compensation, but the winner got to work for IDW on the regular monthly Transformer title.
You were so close, though.
I made it to the very end, and I got beat by Casey Collier, who actually did go on to do a bunch of work for IDW. So, I mean, I lost to somebody who was actually very good.
But if you ever had a chance to do Transformers, you would totally do it.
Yeah, I would have. But the thing is they actually did. He didn't get paid for that work.
You didn't get paid for your entries, but it was fun, and you got clear to the end.
Yeah, I got clear. I was like right to the very end. And but Casey Collier went on to do a bunch of paid work for IDW. But they did make good. They did make good on it. They did wind up giving him paid work.
And he actually ended up doing a lot of work for them. So
yeah, he did. So it does have. I'm sorry. It's just like this mentality now. So here we have this guy. There's a big difference between posting concept art on your DeviantArt page and actually having your work implemented in a high-profile game. If you're trying to build a portfolio, having your work in a popular product is pretty valuable. If you don't think having professional work in a shipped product holds any value, then simply don't participate. Go apply for a job as a concept artist.
And you know what? The people that apply for concept art, they don't always get their names on stuff.
No.
Where this person's gonna for sure get their name on it.
Yeah, they get a unique tag in the game and everything to prove it's them.
What's really gonna suck is people who are actual content. That's what they do. They're like concept artists. They're gonna make some amazing stuff, and it's gonna be hard to compete.
Yeah, here, another professional concept artist. Again, here's the difference. I'm going to tell you what the difference is. The people who have actually worked in the industry know this is how it works. If you've never worked in the industry and you've only done Tumblr art or DeviantArt stuff, or you're in school, you've got this really warped idea of how things work. And I'm sorry. I mean, I wish I could be like, yeah, you know what? You wake up, draw stick figures, and you get paid $1 million for it. But that's not the way it works.
And you know what? There's so many people who want to do this that, it's hard to get in anyway on a normal basis.
So here's a professional designer. Honestly, as a professional concept artist, as my day job is, won one of these when I was starting out, Dead or Alive 5, they don't bother me. I didn't have a portfolio of characters at the time, so doing a one-off game I loved and winning gave me a morale boost I still have to this day. They even kept sending me swag that wasn't promised. There is less pressure when money isn't involved and someone isn't asking you directly. However, the spec thing only works on something you love. Once people do this for money, instead of love, you may get better portfolio submissions, but ends up being far less special since the winner may not even be a fan. When I worked at Capcom years later, kids would still send us their Robot Master designs even without the competition because they always
You used to send in stuff.
I
all
did.
The time.
I sent stuff to Mattel. I used to send He-Man. I used to send I'd mock up He-Man package art and stuff, and I'd mail it to them, and they would always send me a nice.
But you were mocking up package art.
I was.
I love you.
I was like, maybe He-Man would sell better if the package art was better. So I'm like, here's my.
But that was your thought.
Yes, when I was 10.
Why do you remind me of Sheldon for some reason?
Yeah, because He-Man, I knew He-Man wasn't doing too good because there was less.
So you were trying to save He-Man by telling them the marketing strategy was poor.
When I was 9 or 10 years old.
I love you so much.
I have those letters somewhere. Mattel would always write me back.
Oh, that's
and they would
so
be
cute.
like,
I can't even.
They'd be like, hi. And they're like, thanks for sending us yet another one of your ideas.
Well, maybe if they had listened to you, they would have sold toys longer.
Maybe they would have,
I'm sorry, this is the cutest thing. Okay.
So I had all these. It was always Mattel, and I had He-Man, and I mocked up He-Man.
I mean, I knew you sent stuff, but I didn't know you did it. You did it because you thought their marketing was poor and it could be improved.
I mocked up the front and the back. I'm like,
you did the back too?
I would make notes. I'd be like, you've been using the same red rocks for years. Maybe He-Man needs something else to get attention.
I love you.
Because Transformers and G.I. Joe changed their packing and they're selling better.
The fact that you recognize this at 9, this explains so much about you. Anyway.
But I was making little, I was doing the job when I was a kid, and I was, yeah.
Been almost married for 19 years. And I knew you did drawings, but I never knew it was because you were telling them how to market better.
I wasn't just drawing pictures of stuff. I was literally drawing action figures inside the bubble, and I was putting here's where the logo should go. Here's what the back should look like.
But they should have listened to you because you were the target audience, and you might have had some good ideas.
Because I was as a kid, I'm this is what I look for when I go to the store. When I want to buy a toy.
That was actually some invaluable information there, Mattel.
Well, clearly Mattel's not listening to anything I say at this point. Clearly.
Me neither.
But I did. I have those. Where are my grandparents? I had them somewhere, but I would.
Would they send them back to you?
Yeah, they would send them back to me with a letter, and they would say,
I hope you have mine.
I don't know if I have them. I was 9 or 10 years old. And
if it was my parents, you'd have them. Because my parents kept everything. But it's so amazing.
Well, because I used to draw, I would draw, I'd go through reams of, we were really getting off subject. And Mattel didn't give me any money for this stuff, but they were hey.
He was working on spec before he was even.
I was working on spec. So we were doing child labor on spec. That's the worst.
No, they weren't gonna ever
But they knew me by name because they're hi again.
This reminds me of that time that Pinky Boo had the amazing idea for a Squishable. I felt so bad. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was a little cloud with a rainbow. It was well drawn. It was amazing. And
that was my fault.
And because we didn't know what the guidelines were, we wanted to make sure we followed the guidelines. You asked them how old you had to be and showed them. We were talking to them about Winston at the time.
Yeah.
And because we have actually a plush Winston from Squishables. And it turned out that because she wasn't old enough, he wasn't allowed to enter it because he could have just entered under his name or whatever, not said her age and been fine. He went and said something to him, and then she's still salty to this day because they loved it, and it would have probably would have gotten into the contest to win. But but again, it would have been violating the rules unless you put your name on it. And she's still salty. And then later on, they came out with another design that looks very similar to hers. I don't think it's related. I think that somebody else that didn't see it did something similar. But it was really good. But she wasn't old enough. So anyway, back to the point, which is we're really off topic because this is what our channel does.
Yeah, so anyway, they said, yeah, there are two minds. Again, these are comments on Kotaku. They said, we're paying you exposure argument is certainly true. And that is true. This is not what we're talking about here. We're going to talk about another situation with Capcom and UDON and their tribute books.
Mm-hmm. Well, we need to get to that because we're like really taking a way around.
But this is not the same as, hey, draw an entire comic book for me for free, and if I get any profits, I might give you some money.
And this isn't spec work either.
There's a difference. Contest.
There is a huge difference between this and spec work.
Yeah, they said there are people who do scumming practices, but how is what Capcom is doing any different from other contests in the past that worked similarly? It's not.
That's what we're saying.
It's not. So, this has happened before. Now, I want to point out, speaking of the tribute books, this particular author was all in, was supportive of these Capcom tribute books, which they've been doing for a while, which is basically people do pinup art of Capcom characters.
That's a beautiful piece, by the way.
It is. And there are some, and I agree, there are some amazing fan artists out there. It's
there are. I mean, sometimes the fan art is so much better than even the official.
Yeah, because I'm like, if you're, and this is where they find a lot of their official artists, I'm like, if you're going to put your stuff out there for free on Tumblr or DeviantArt, you might as well get it published.
Well, maybe Capcom, could do something like, well, take like the top winners and then put them into like some kind of digital book and put out there with their names on. They can even do something like that, or so it boosts people. Like the top, 100 entries will, put into a book or something.
Well, okay, so the Capcom Fighting Tribute book. This is an older article. This is coming from The Beat. And I do remember hearing about this. Now, these books have actually been pretty successful. They get a lot of submissions for them because, again, there are so many passionate Street Fighter fans out there.
You talked about putting in for it.
I was going to.
Do it. Yeah, I told you to do it.
I didn't have time.
Yeah, that's a problem all the time.
I didn't have time. I don't have nearly as much time to draw as I used to, especially now doing YouTube.
Hey, anybody out there doing these books, you never know. You could ask Kneon and maybe he'll have time to submit something.
Yeah, there we go. But this is from 2014. Now, this 2014, 2015, I think is where we started to reach kind of peak idiocy when it came to this sort of stuff, because I know when we were looking for colorists, it was about that time frame.
Yeah,
and
God, I can't even.
And I think there were some articles floating around on Tumblr that were like, anything you do, any scribbles you scribble on a napkin, the restaurant should pay you for it.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
That kind of mindset. Meanwhile, most of these people were not getting paid at all for their artwork.
But these are a lot of people who also, like I said, think that, they should be paid to sit and have health insurance, to sit at home and draw and write whatever they want because they're them.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's how this works. So they had to backpedal. Heidi McDonald, I was very surprised because Heidi's been, I shouldn't be now, but I mean, back in the day, she has been on top of the comic book industry. She knows to break into Marvel, you would have to do, lots and lots of unpaid sequentials to show them you could do the job. She knows how it works. But she thought it was a predatory practice.
No, she was just saying that because she thought it'd get more hits for her article.
Yeah, well, some people called her out.
She would know better.
She does know better. And people called her out in the comments. Now, this was, 5 or 6 years ago. But basically, UDON, if you enter the contest, not only can you say, hey, I got my art in the UDON tribute book, but they actually paid your license so you could sell prints of your artwork.
Because people don't understand that just because you do fan art doesn't give you the legal right to actually sell the fan art. People do that. Like I know places, some of the artists like with Disney and stuff have deals worked out that they can sell prints or whatever. But oftentimes, you should have a license or some kind of agreement that you're allowed to sell the art. That's where we run into problems like, people getting in trouble for copyright infringement and all that.
Right. And that is happening more and more, especially at the bigger conventions now. This year's not a problem because everything's closed. But Marvel, Disney, they were going around cracking down on people.
Right, because we're not talking like a one-off. They usually don't care if you do a one-off, but if you're mass producing something and selling multiple prints of it, or multiple shirts or whatever, that's when they get more concerned.
Right. So a lot of people entered these, and they've been very successful, and they were able to sell their prints. Now, it said all selected artwork becomes a property of Capcom. Well,
that's normal.
Again, I want to talk about this too, because I did a video
all selected artwork. So that's not even all artwork.
No, it's if your artwork is in the book, then that artwork, basically I think why they're doing it is if they want to reprint this at a later date, they have the rights to do it. Now, again, voluntary submission. You don't have to enter. Don't
enter then.
Just don't enter. It's not predatory because it's a volunteer. Now, what is predatory is when you've got Lucasfilm out there scooping up fan designs without permission, without consent, and putting them into official products.
Trying to say, well, it's our property, so we can do that. Yeah, it's your property, but it's not your art.
It's a bad look, you know. It is. But the thing is technically, and Disney's lawyered up, and they know the law. The law is if you're doing a derivative work, you know, as far as they're concerned, your fan art is basically property of that company.
This is how one thing I will say about Disney, it pisses me off, is people will put things up on like Etsy or whatever, t-shirt designs or cool designs. Sometimes they aren't even related to, like, it's within enough range of being removed that it should still be okay.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, here comes Disney selling shirts that look very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar to what these people have put out on Etsy. And sometimes, you know, it is their logos or it is their copyrighted whatever. But sometimes it's just a simple design and a clever play on words. You know, and the next thing you know, it shows up at Disney parks. And I've noticed that many, many times.
Yeah, so, yeah, and they know the law, and they're lawyered up. But again, this is a voluntary thing. You can make up 200 prints. Well, if you're selling those prints at $25 to $50 a pop, you know,
there's a limit on how many you can
Yeah,
make,
you can't.
so.
There is. You can do 250.
Honestly, that probably is because of licensing rights, and because there's probably different levels of what they could pay for. You know what I mean? And they paid for up to that many for that license.
Yeah, so it would be mass producing. I think if you go beyond that, they consider that like a mass produced product. So I think that's why they're capping it. But you know, you have a lot of people who are like, don't do it. You know, because I love Capcom doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Well, then don't do it.
You don't. No one's making you do any of this stuff.
Now, Tom Spurgeon, who has passed away. Tom Spurgeon, who was another.
I remember him.
Yeah, he passed away last year or the year before. R.I.P. He was a comics blogger.
No, but his comment though.
His comment, the very first comment. Does this mean you're paying all of your people now? Because a lot of people are volunteering time to blogs like Comics Beat.
Or they're getting paid like $5-10 an article to
Comic book
blogs,
resources.
And then they're like, well, it's for the exposure. And that's okay.
Yeah, so it's too bad Capcom's such a struggling company and needs support from artists. They talk about that. But look, I mean, don't enter. You know, I mean, Heidi said earlier, if they actually paid for the submissions, the book would be too expensive to even put out. Is that where we're really at these days?
Yes.
Yeah. And this was 2014.
That's why it was volunteer. There's a lot of anthologies out there that they don't crowdfund to pay the artists. Artists voluntarily give them. And I remember thinking about anthologies. I'm like, well, how do you break up the money then? I mean, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just like it's enough to get printed. Sometimes the artists get paid. They probably, I would say,
no,
they
but
break
I mean,
it down
they don't pay by the work. Sometimes it's just you submit to
Get copies,
anthology and then you get copies and that's it. You don't get paid. And other anthologies, you know, they do split the money with the artist, but that is not always the case.
Yeah, so I don't know. You know, again, this is completely voluntary. So this is a stupid you know, thing, I think, to compare this to predatory practices.
It's not spec. It's not spec work at all.
At the end of the day, yeah. And even then, I hate to break it to you, there are so many really talented people out there that want to work, and I'm not condoning skeezy behavior, but I'm telling you the truth. The truth is, to stand out, you're going to have to be able to like drop something in their lap and say, hey, I worked on this, or look what I drew this on spec. This is what I can do. Hire me. You're going to have to do something to stand out.
Yeah, a lot of times people use their spec work as a portfolio piece to go get work other places.
Yeah.
Unless it's something that they can't because there's like, something secret in it or something. But they usually don't give you that for spec work.
I had to do, so, we talked about before, I worked on Disney Comics for years. I had to do tryouts.
You did?
I had to do multiple tryouts. I had to actually get approved by Disney. I had to sign paperwork with Disney to work on this stuff. And there were times like I had worked for years on Disney projects, and then another Disney project would come up. I would have to try out again.
Again, yes, but you did for IDW.
Yeah, I did for IDW. So I had to do it again. So just because even once you've broken in, even if they know you can do the work, they know you've been vetted before, you sometimes have to go through that process again.
Well, sometimes like with celebrities, they still have to audition for parts.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. Sometimes you still have to audition.
Yeah, until you're. Yeah, I mean, they're like
even big ones still sometimes have to audition to see how if the chemistry works with other people that they have already picked. It happens.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you get movies that maybe don't quite hit because they just hire like two A-list actors and they're not compatible. They're not compatible, but so this is the reality of the industry. I'm sorry if you guys don't like to hear it. That's just the way it works. This is not predatory. Don't enter it if you don't want to. I think it'd be pretty cool to see my costume in an official Capcom.
You can always enter. Pinky Boo's too young, or I guarantee she'd probably be into it.
Oh yeah, she's too young. But I guess we're gonna wrap this one up.
Yep.
So please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and wow, what's going on here? News, views, and rants, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.